This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, this is a story that we picked up but didn't have a lot of time to develop last week on Friday, I think. Valerie Plame Wilson, Valerie Plame, the leftist heroine who was outed by CIA agent, who was outed by Richard Armitage, and then ultimately the basis of a prosecution against Scooter Libby by our own Patrick Fitzgerald when he was U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Illinois. A political persecution, I think would be more accurate to describe. But nonetheless, Valerie Plame, it turns out, I know she's been out of mind for a number of years now, but it turns out she's sort of a virulent anti-Semite. This according to her tweeting. She tweeted out last week a op-ed entitled "America's Jews Are Driving America's Wars," which contained all kinds of, frankly, anti-Semitic contentions. And then she sort of apologized for it, saying, I zeroed in on the neocon criticism and shared it without seeing and considering the rest, and so it was just a mistake, and she apologized. Except people did what they want to do and started digging back into previous tweets. I'll give you an example. This from a couple of years earlier, May of 2015. Valerie Plame posted a news item about Natalie Portman, who was it was announced that she was going to play Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg in an upcoming movie. Valerie Plame's tweet on that news. Well, they're both Jewish.
Okay.
Kind of odd.
Maybe early stages of dementia?
No. I think I think she's of sound mind and body. I think she's just kind of a creepy bigot, which you see a lot on the left these days. For more on this topic, and he has opined on this matter, we're joined now by our friend and famed Harvard Law professor, Alan Dershowitz. Professor Dershowitz, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, this really does represent what I've been writing about for a long time. The bigotry of both the extreme left and the extreme right. We all know about the extreme right, the neo-Nazis and the Klan, and that's yesterday's news, hopefully. But the bigotry of the extreme left, the tolerance for anti-Semitism by the extreme left, is a story that ought to be covered more aggressively. And I think Valerie Plame is part of that. But the article that she tweeted also said that anytime somebody like me or Bill Kristol appears on television, if we're Jewish and we support Israel, there ought to be a banner on the bottom saying, this is a Jew.
Yeah, right.
And accepting his views, even in small amounts, is like ingesting rat poison. That's what it says in the article, that listening to a Jew is like ingesting rat poison. And then, of course, the article says the Jews control the media, control all the politicians, control the entertainment industry, and basically destroy America by pushing it toward war. Of course, if you look at any group of people, it contains, obviously, some who support a more hawkish policy and some who support a less hawkish policy. And generalizing about Jews supporting this or that is so bigoted, and Valerie Plame had to know that when she retweeted it. In fact, after she tried to apologize, she said, well, it's a thoughtful article. A thoughtful article saying that I have to get on television and wear essentially a yellow star? I mean, I'm proud of my Jewish heritage, but I don't want anybody else to put something on the bottom of my name saying, he's a Jew, watch out, it's like rat poison. I mean, that kind of stuff you would think is no longer acceptable, but it is acceptable on the hard left, and it is acceptable among some on the hard right. And that's why we have to fight bigotry on either extreme. And what I worry about is the center-left tolerates anti-Semitism on the hard left, and some people on the center-right tolerate it on the hard right. Well, I have to tell you, there's less toleration on the right these days among conservatives than there is on the left these days among radicals. So I'm concerned about that.
Well, what do you think?
Remember, it's the hard left that dominates our universities today. And those are our future leaders.
Well, what do you think's going on with her? Why is she doing this?
Well, I think she doesn't like Jews.
Well, okay.
She
No,
doesn't like
Occam's
Israel.
razor.
You can say it.
She's harbored these views for a long time. She knows they're unacceptable. And every so often, it gets the best of her, and she retweets something. You know, the thing about tweets, we know it from our president, they're impulsive. The tweet is something you do without really thinking it through. You know, my wife doesn't allow me to tweet. She requires that all of my tweets go through two levels. First, I have to send her a copy, and then I have to send a copy to my secretary, my assistant. And if they approve it, then it goes out. She's terrified.
Really?
I will tweet something that, I regret later. So, the tweet, there's an old Latin expression, in vino veritas, when you drink a little wine, the truth come out. I would change that to in tweeto veritas.
Yes, very good.
Tweet, the truth comes out.
Well, let me ask you this, though. Is it particularly noxious and concerning from Valerie Plame because she was a former CIA agent? I mean, the idea that these are views that are held by any intelligence officer in the U.S. government is concerning. It
is, and I think the guy who she tweeted also had an intelligence background. And so, look, within intelligence agencies, within any agencies, you're going to get people who have strong points of view on these issues. The interesting thing, of course, is that intelligence agencies in the United States have generally been very pro-Israel because Israel has been a major source of intelligence breakthroughs. The UN recently disclosed that Israeli intelligence has prevented a lot of terrorist attacks all over the world. And so intelligence officers generally are more supportive of Israel than the general run of people, say, in the State Department. But obviously Valerie Plame is an exception to that. And I think her true feelings have come out in these tweets and how she handled it after she was caught. I hadn't heard about the Natalie Portman issue. Natalie was my former student.
Really?
Yeah, right.
She was a sensational student. When I had her as a student, I didn't know she was an actor because she had a different name. Her name was Natalie Hirschlag. She used her family name or her mother's name. She didn't want anybody at Harvard to know that she was Princess Leia. And she's a terrific woman. And but the fact that she's Jewish and Ginsburg is Jewish, who would think of that?
Right.
Unless somebody who was obsessed with the Jewish control of the media or that kind of thing.
Well, why do you think that this doesn't get coverage? Why is this not? Why is the profile not raised on this?
The media tilts left, and the left protects itself. And it's so easy to point the finger at neo-Nazis, to point the finger at the Klan. They're such obvious, easy targets. Nobody from the Klan or from the Nazi Party would ever be welcomed at a college or a university. But today, people on the extreme left will be. Valerie Plame will be welcomed as a speaker now on college campuses. On the other hand, I'm speaking Wednesday night at Columbia University, and there'll be protests because I support a two-state solution where Israel exists and a Palestinian state exists. And that's regarded as much too conservative for many at Columbia. So there will be protests about my speaking at Columbia, and I'm going to try to have an intelligent, rational conversation about the Middle East. And the last thing that many hard leftists on college campuses want today is a rational conversation about the Middle East, or a rational conversation
in
about
general.
President Trump, or a rational
in general.
Well, when you go into situations like that, do you have to have security?
I do. I need security all the time. Whenever I speak about Israel on any university campus, both in the United States and Canada and Europe, I need substantial security. There will be security, and I'm protected. I'm not worried about physical violence, but there may be attempts, as it has been in the past in Columbia, not to allow me to speak, to shout every time I get up to speak, every time I try to utter a word, to try to shout me down. That's what happened recently at many, many colleges, and twice. There were efforts, once at the University of California at Irvine and once at the University of Massachusetts in Boston, efforts to try to not allow me to continue my speech because they didn't like what I had to say. And there's an intolerance on many university campuses for views that are unpopular among some students. And my views are, centrist views right down the middle. I'm a liberal Democrat. I voted Hillary Clinton. I support a two-state solution, but I'm not radical enough for some hard leftists, so my views are unacceptable on some college campuses.
Give us your take on what the implications of the BDS movement is, particularly on college campuses, but it's not limited there. We have a Chicago City Council member here who almost was a candidate for lieutenant governor, who is an outspoken advocate for BDS. I mean, I would say he's more than just an outspoken advocate for BDS. They try and make this was just anti-Israel, but not anti-Semitism. Your take on it?
BDS is virulently anti-Semitic. It started out as the Nazi boycott of Jewish goods in the 1930s. It was then picked up in 1948 by the Arab League. It applies to Jews like me. For example, when I was invited to debate at Oxford, the head of the BDS movement said he wouldn't debate me because I'm a Jewish supporter of Israel, even though I'm not an Israeli. The BDS movement is anti-peace. It's not designed to end the occupation. It's designed to end Israel. And I'm glad there's legislation now pending all over the country trying to prevent economic boycotts or economic sanctions directed against Israel. Remember, the same people who support BDS want to end sanctions on Cuba, end sanctions on North Korea, end sanctions on Iran. The only country they want to sanction in the world, the only country, is the nation state of the Jewish people. And there has to be something suspicious about that when you have a world full of human rights violations and only one country in the whole Middle East that's a democracy that supports gay rights, and you're going to focus on that country to sanction and boycott. There's something bigoted about that.
Yeah, I sense you're right about that. He is Alan Dershowitz, famed Harvard Law professor. The piece on Valerie Plame knew exactly what she was tweeting at foxnews.com. Professor Dershowitz, thanks as always for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.